Have you ever wanted to build a Craftsman kit and thought they are all too hard to build? In this video series I will be building Fisher Fuels, which is a railroad kit by Jimmy Dignan. I will step you through some very basic steps to achieve some awesome results. Hi, I'm Darren from Model Railroad Techniques. My YouTube channel produces how-to videos for the beginner modeler. If you follow these steps, I will help you build your Craftsman kit. The skills you will learn can easily be transferred across to any Craftsman kit you choose to build. So let's get started. Subscribe, click that little bell icon to be notified of upcoming videos. Support us on Patreon, like us on Facebook and Instagram at Model Railroad Techniques. The first step in any good Craftsman kit build is to make sure you've braced all the walls up. So Jimmy has kindly supplied us a little bracing template there. So basically what happens is the A and the B's have the bracing flush against the edges, whereas the C, the D's and the rest of them have a combination of the both. So all I do to get them of an inset, I grab another piece of the 1/8 inch strip wood and I put it against the edge there. So what I'll then do, you see those little pegs that I've got there, is that acts like a little guide, so I know that it's a perfect inset. So what I do, so once the guide is in place, I should say, I grab my Aleene's Super Tacky glue, and you can see just with a toothpick or cocktail stick I just run a very neat bead along there. So it's very important that you get good coverage right the way along, but to prevent any warping. And then all I do is push it up against the guide there, and make sure you don't push it too hard, and then just press it down nice and tightly. So you just got to be careful you don't get any glue on the edge of the bit that's staying, because it will glue to the guide and then it will make it very difficult to get it off. So at this point I'm just going to cut some more 1/8 timber there. So it's just a matter of measuring it up very, very loosely, with marking it with a pencil, getting your razor saw and cutting it to length. Now starts the fun bit. We start colouring the walls up. So what I've actually done there, after all the bracings and all that has dried and I'm happy that they're nice and rock solid, I have used the rattle can with some undercoat and just give it a slight sort of misting, sort of set it at an angle up underneath, so it gets the clapboard up underneath. Also, you probably can't see it quite all that well in that picture, but I've actually added a little bit of texture to those clapboards by using a wire brush and brushing along the board, not sort of horizontal up and down, vertical up and down, but horizontally across with the grain of the board. The next step is to add the Indian ink wash. So that's just quite a mild wash with isopropanol alcohol. So it's just a matter of gently putting it on. I've splodged it on a little bit too much. Now it's important you wait to do this type of step after all the bracing goes off. I've had a few walls warp over the time, so just make the process go a little bit easier and less time consuming to try to unwarp your wall, which is possible and no biggie if that's what does happen, but I always like to do it after I have braced my walls. I think you get the picture how you just splodge on the Indian ink wash. You don't need to see the rest of it, so I'll see the other side. The Indian ink wash is now all dry, so now what we're going to look at doing is what colours we're going to use. So I had a little bit of an experiment what I wanted to do on a card there, so I used various colours from the Americana range there. So some of them I weren't all that happy with, because I'm not exactly 100% sure where I'm going to put this building at this point in time. So what I went back to the tried and trusted, the Antique White by Art Deco, which is also the Australians version of the Americana brand. So what I looked at doing is using this Crackle Medium by Folk Art. So what that actually does, you do your base coat of the grey, you paint a thick layer of the Crackle Medium on, and then you paint your colour to go over the top, and then it just comes up with this crackling effect. At this point in time, I don't think I've done enough experimentation with it to go on a kit at this point in time. So here, this piece of clapboard here is me experimenting around. So the top one there, yes, I know it's a different colour. It's just using a paintbrush to paint the individual boards sporadically, and so the bottom section there is me experimenting with the sponge. So I'm a bit more comfortable with the sponge technique at this point in time, so that's what I'm going to use moving forward. So it's a pretty easy technique. This, you just get your colour you're going to use, obviously Antique White in my case, just splodge some on the paint palette there, and just pick some up in the sponge ever so lightly. So that's also a good idea, as you can piece of cardboard I have there. Then it's just a matter of just working through the model, and it's almost like a dry brushing technique. So you just sort of just go over a few passes. Obviously less is more, and you can always build up in your layers, so it's important to build up in the layers with the colour, because once the colour's on there thick and fast, it's a lot harder to put a gradation of colour in there. So what I'm going to try to do is probably a little thicker towards the top with sort of more paint gradation towards the bottom, purely due to the weather at the bottom of the building, in my mind, would get more weathering. So that's the first pass in the clapboard wall there. So as I said, less is more, so I will go back through and just slowly build up the coloration on that wall. So here's all the wall sections all coloured up, or the first layer regarding the sponge technique anyway. So as you can see, there's different gradations regarding each wall. The beauty of this technique, each wall is different, and it adds quite a nice effect that makes it look like it's peeling off the board. So the next bit is doing the window treatments and putting the windows in. Next step of the build is now colouring up all the windows. So you can see the Tichy windows there on the sprues. So what I look at doing, I need to cut them off the sprue. So what I actually use is this neat little tool that I bought from Micromart, which is a little sprue cutter. This little piece of kit saves a substantial amount of time, because you can cut them back nice and neatly to the edge of the sprue. And what that does, that gives very limited amount of tidy up with a sanding stick or file or whatever you do to tidy them up with. As you can see, I've added the windows to this, so I haven't done any of the glazing or any of the drapes or anything like that yet. But the colouring of the windows was just sponged as I did the clapboard. So I undercoated them with the rattle can with a grey primer. Then I just sponged over the top. So that colour blue there is a mixture of Americana or Deco Art Island Blue and Americana Sea Glass. So my daughter actually came up with the colouring, so she was just mucking around with some colours, and I like the look of it, so we went along with it. So a little artistic flair coming out in the young lady there. So what we need to do now is I'm going to start to texture up and sort of start lifting some of these boards and start going through with some pastel chalk. So just have a bit of a think about how these sides might weather up in the real world. So what I'm going to do here is start lifting some of the boards. So you can see I've got a number 11 X-Acto blade there. Try to get a reasonably new one. And then it's just a matter of going along the line of the board and then just slowly digging in and turning it up. So you sort of get that effect there regarding the board wearing and starting to lift as it's warped in over time. At this point in time, I go in with my pastel chalks and my stiff brush. So it's just a sort of a burnt umbery sort of darkish brown, and sort of just accentuate that line in on there. So it's got to be a little bit careful here. That first one I have gone a little bit overboard with it, but what you can actually do is, if you do go overboard, you just get a kid's school eraser, and then you can just go back through and rub it, and it actually gets rid of some of it and actually starts blending in nicely. At this point in time, I'll start going with other colours. So this, I'm looking at sort of a bit of a soft sort of ochre type colour. So just be mindful when you are doing your lines of your water sort of trickling down. It's sort of, you got to make sure that the lines are vertical, perfectly vertical, because that's how water will run. It will find its vertical lines and move its way down, particularly with clapboards. So if you sort of come out at an angle, it does look a bit unrealistic. So just have a bit of a play on another piece of clapboard to start with, and the key is not to, less is more, and just keep building up your colours. So as you can see, I'm just slowly building up different colours, the ochre, and just as I said, vertical lines coming down. I've also used a grey colour, and I really get into the bottom of the seals and the tops of the doors and the windows there. So the next step is putting the window glazing in. So all I've done there is cut some acetate sheeting there, just a little bit bigger than the window, and just putting some glue in each corner. Now, just be very mindful to use some sort of PVA type glue. That's tacky glue. So the issue with using CA type of glue, it'll make your window opaque, and if that's the look you're after, that's fine, but if you want it nice and clear like that, use CA glue. Sorry, PVA glue. So that is a Venetian blind that I downloaded from HO Scale Customs on their website. I'll put a link below to that. It's a really fun podcast with Brett and Todd Wiley talking about all things modelling. They're absolute blast. So a big shout out to those gentlemen who have supported my channel over the last 8 or 9 months. So there's the glazing and the blinds fitted in situ. So as you can see, I've put them at different heights. The one on the far right, I put on an angle. So it's up to you what you want to do. I believe they look quite effective, particularly from a distance. So this is the part number 1 finished in its entirety. So that's all the walls being put together. You can see I've put the trimming on the side of each of the walls there. So that's the same color as the door and the window frames, just weathered up. I've also scraped some detail into that with a wire brush as well. So I've gone back in on the weathering a little bit and just toned it down a little bit on the main building on the right hand side. I just wasn't all that happy with the vertical lines that I had made, so I just went back in with some rubbing alcohol, which was pointed out to me by a fellow on Facebook by the name of Leo Palatti. I do apologise if I've pronounced your name wrong, Leo, but big shout out to you and thanks for giving me such a detailed Facebook post. So basically what he suggested to do is go back in with some alcohol wash and a Q-tip or a micro brush is what I did, and just teased up and smudged some more of those vertical lines away. So what that does, that gives the overall appearance of more of a weathered board effect. Hope you've enjoyed the video, so look forward to seeing you next time on episode 2, where I'll go through putting the roof on, which is going to be shingles, which is first time for me, and also a tar paper roof. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. Make sure you subscribe, click that little bell icon to be notified of upcoming videos. Support us on Patreon, like us on Facebook and Instagram at Model Railroad Techniques.